The first time I noticed the smell, it was faint. Not bad, just wrong. My husband, Adrian, was humming softly in the kitchen, his shirt sleeves rolled up, the golden morning light hitting his watch just right. He looked like the kind of man magazine covers adored. Refined, successful, perfectly calm. He turned with a smile that could disarm anyone. "Your favorite," he said, placing the porcelain cup in front of me. "Caramel hazelnut, just the way you like it." I smiled, but something about the aroma snagged my attention. It wasn't caramel. It wasn't hazelnut. It was metallic, sharp, like rust hidden beneath sugar. "New beans?" I asked, pretending to stir. He nodded, casual. "Imported from Italy. I thought I'd surprise you." His tone was easy, but his eyes flickered. Too quick, too practiced. My sister-in-law, Leela, breezed in then, wearing silk pajamas and yesterday's lipstick. She looked at Adrian like she owned the air he breathed. "Making coffee for everyone, brother dear," she said, her smile sweet and poisonous all at once. I watched the way his hand brushed hers as he reached for the sugar jar. Accidental, maybe. Or maybe not. Leela had moved in with us 3 months ago after her temporary separation. She said she needed time, a place to heal. Adrian had been generous about it, almost eager. I had been accommodating. "Morning, Leela," I said evenly. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Dreams again." She looked at Adrian. "You know the ones." He gave a small, knowing smile. I wanted to pour the coffee on both of them. Instead, I smiled. Maybe coffee will help. Adrian set another cup on the table. The same porcelain, same spoon, same steaming liquid with that faint, unsettling scent. He turned to check his phone as Leela reached for one of the cups. And that's when I did it. I switched them. Quick, casual, unnoticed. It wasn't planned. It was instinct. Something deep in me, the same part that recognized danger before logic caught up, moved my hand. Leela lifted the cup and took a sip. Strong." Adrian looked up, distracted. "You like it?" "I do," she said, smiling faintly. "Tastes different, but good." I forced myself to take a sip from the other cup. Bitter. Normal. No strange taste, no metallic note. I placed it down quietly. Adrian's shoulders relaxed as if some invisible test had been passed. For the rest of the morning, nothing seemed wrong. But inside me, something had shifted. It was as if the room itself had whispered a warning I couldn't unhear. Later that day, I found myself replaying the moment in my head while getting ready for brunch with friends. I looked in the mirror, my reflection flawless, makeup precise, every hair in place, but I couldn't shake the chill. What if I hadn't switched the cups? Then a low voice. Leela's. I crept to the staircase, bare feet silent on marble. The house was too big, too polished, every corner reflecting a life meant to look perfect. At the bottom of the stairs, the glow of the kitchen lights spilled onto the hallway floor. Leela's voice was sharp, hushed. "You said she wouldn't notice." Adrian's answer was lower, urgent. "She didn't. Don't panic." My breath caught. I leaned forward, the railing cool against my fingers. "Then why did you make me drink it?" she snapped. My heart stopped. "Because I couldn't risk it being obvious," he hissed. "She watches everything." I pressed a hand to my mouth, the edges of their words blurred as adrenaline pounded in my ears. "So, what now?" Leela said. "Now," Adrian whispered, "we wait." I backed away slowly, quietly, until I was upstairs again, heart hammering. Wait for what? Morning came with a cruel kind of calm. Leela smiled at me over breakfast, as though nothing had happened. Adrian kissed my cheek before leaving for work. I smiled too, but my hands were trembling. When they were gone, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the untouched coffee pot. I poured myself a cup and smelled it carefully. Normal. Still, I poured it down the drain. That afternoon, I went to visit my friend Camilla, who owned the gallery downtown. She was the only person I could talk to without censoring myself. "You look pale," she said as I walked in. "Rough night?" I gave a hollow laugh. "Something like that." She poured me real coffee, rich and aromatic, the kind that fills a room like comfort. So, trouble in paradise, she asked? More like trouble pretending paradise still exists. I hesitated. Camilla, can coffee smell metallic? She frowned. Metallic? Like blood or rust? I nodded. Maybe it's nothing, I said quickly, regretting bringing it up. But she didn't let it go. You think he's cheating again? I looked away. Not exactly. I think he's hiding something. She raised a brow. You mean besides the sister-in-law living in your guest wing? She's family, I said automatically, then sighed. I'm not even sure what's real anymore. Camilla's tone softened. Elena, you've always known. You just didn't want to see it. That night, Adrian came home late. His tie loosened, shirt collar open, the faint smell of whiskey following him. Long day, he said, kissing my head. I nodded, pretending to be half asleep on the couch. How's Leela? I asked. Better, he said too quickly. Why? She seemed off this morning. He shrugged. She's emotional, still processing the divorce. He poured himself a drink. I watched his reflection in the glass cabinet door. Calm, perfect, unbothered. The kind of man who could lie and make it sound like truth. I waited until he went to bed before checking the trash bin. Inside, buried under paper towels, was an empty packet of imported coffee beans. Italian, yes, but not caramel hazelnut. It was labeled Nightshade Blend. My stomach dropped. Nightshade. The word itself tasted poisonous. I took a photo of the packet and flushed the rest of the grounds down the sink. The next morning, Leela didn't come down for breakfast. Adrian said she was resting. He seemed calm, but I noticed how often he checked his phone. By noon, there was a soft knock at my study door. It was Leela. She looked pale, eyes rimmed red. I need to talk to you, she whispered. I gestured for her to sit. What's wrong? She said she'd been sick since yesterday. My stomach, my head, I can't keep anything down. I felt cold all over. Did you go to the doctor? He said it's probably a virus. She paused, her lip trembling. Do you think he's angry with me? Why would he be? I asked carefully. Her eyes filled with tears. Because of what we did. My heart pounded. What you did? He said it was all for you, she said, voice shaking. That it was the only way to be free. Free from what? I whispered. From your father's will, she said, almost in a trance. From the condition. He said you'd never let him control the company unless... She trailed off, blinking rapidly. Unless what, Leela? I pressed. She stared at me, eyes wide, as if realizing she'd said too much. Forget it, she murmured. I'm just tired. She stood abruptly and left. I sat frozen. My father's will. Adrian had never cared about the company before, but recently he'd been asking questions about shares, board access, signatures. I reached for my phone and called our family lawyer, pretending it was a routine check. Just wanted to ask about the trust clauses, I said lightly. Anything unusual I should know about? Well, he said, flipping through papers, your father was cautious. If anything were to happen to you, control would automatically pass to your spouse. My blood turned to ice. Even in case of illness. He said, especially illness. He didn't want the business and chaos. I hung up slowly. The metallic smell, the switched cups, the whispered argument. It wasn't about love or even betrayal anymore. It was about power. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Adrian's calm face, Leela's trembling hands, the faint shimmer of poison in a cup meant for me. And I knew then, whatever he was planning wasn't finished. The next move was mine. I just had to play it carefully, because one thing Adrian didn't know about me, I was done being the quiet one, and if he wanted a game, I was finally ready to play. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that felt staged, as if the walls were holding their breath. Adrian's side of the bed was empty. His phone was gone. I sat up, heart thudding. From the balcony, I could see his car wasn't in the driveway either. He'd left early, or never came back. My hand trembled as I poured myself a cup of plain black coffee. I didn't dare touch the imported blend. Leela's bedroom door was shut, but I could hear faint movement, restless shifting, a muffled cough. I didn't knock. She'd made her choice the moment she sipped from my cup. The guilt was hers to carry, not mine. By 7, Adrian texted, "Board meeting at the firm. Don't wait for me." I stared at the message. No good morning. No kiss emoji. Just business.
just cold. He'd never texted like that before. It wasn't the words, it was the tone, stripped of warmth. I replied nothing. Instead, I went to his study. The room was immaculate. Everything in place, not a speck of dust out of line. But his laptop was still on the desk, asleep. I pressed the spacebar. The screen lit up. Password required. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, calm, composed, but trembling underneath. I tried the obvious. Our wedding date. Denied. My birthday. Denied. His. Still denied. Then I tried Leela. Denied. I laughed softly to myself. Hollow. The sound echoed. But when I typed caramel hazelnut, the screen unlocked. I froze. He'd used my favorite flavor, my identity, as his password. It was twisted, poetic almost, like he was mocking me. His desktop was clean, too clean. But there was one folder on the corner labeled Accounts. Inside, spreadsheets, transaction lists, and a single encrypted file named Nightshade. My pulse spiked. I clicked it. Password protected again. I didn't dare guess this time. Instead, I took a photo of the file name. Then I closed everything, wiped the keyboard clean, and left before my courage broke. At noon, Camilla called. "You sound like a ghost," she said. "What's going on?" I hesitated, then told her. About the coffee, about Leela, about the argument I overheard. She didn't gasp or interrupt, just listened. "Elena," she said, "finally, this isn't paranoia. You need evidence. Real proof. Because if he's planning something and you confront him too soon, he'll turn it on you." "How?" I asked quietly. "He's always been good at making me look crazy." "Then don't let him. Let him think you're still blind." That night, I dressed for dinner as if nothing had happened. Black silk dress, diamond earrings, calm smile. When Adrian came home, he kissed my cheek like a man who had already buried his guilt. "You look stunning," he said smoothly. "Special occasion." "Every day's special when you're around," I said sweetly. He chuckled. "Now I know something's up." We dined on salmon and quiet tension. Leela didn't join us. Adrian barely mentioned her, but when I excused myself to get dessert, I saw his phone light up on the counter. A message preview blinked. "Leela, I can't keep doing this. I'm scared." I froze. He reached for it instantly, but too late. I'd seen. "Work text?" I asked lightly. "Yeah, just a client issue."
He turned his phone face down. "Everything okay with Leela?" He shrugged. "Why wouldn't it be?" "Because she's pale, losing weight, barely eating." His jaw tightened. "She'll recover. She just needs rest." His tone was final. I didn't push further, but my mind was racing. That night, after he fell asleep, I slipped into Leela's room. It smelled of perfume and sickness. On her nightstand were half-empty water bottles, untouched pills, and a small journal. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The handwriting was messy, frantic. "He says it's temporary. He says she'll be fine once it's done. But what if she finds out? What if she already knows? He promised I'd be safe. I don't feel safe." The page was smudged with tears. I snapped photos of every page, hands shaking. Then I heard a floorboard creak behind me. "Couldn't sleep?" Adrian's voice was calm, almost gentle. I turned slowly. He was standing in the doorway, watching me. I forced a smile. "Checking on Leela. She's sick." "You don't need to play nurse," he said, stepping closer. His tone was soft, but his eyes cold steel. "You look tired. Come back to bed." I nodded and walked past him, pretending not to feel the danger coiling in his silence. The next morning, Leela was gone. Her room stripped, suitcase missing. Adrian said she'd gone to stay with friends. "She texted you?" I asked. "Left me a note," he said, handing over a folded piece of paper. The handwriting was shaky, but hers. "Need some space. Don't worry about me. Tell Elena I'm grateful." But the signature was wrong. She always drew a little loop under her name. Here it was missing. I didn't call him out on it.
Instead, I texted Camilla. "She's gone. I think he forged it." She replied instantly, "Come to the gallery today. Bring that photo of the coffee packet." I arrived at noon. The gallery was empty, sunlight slanting across modern paintings, chaos disguised as art. Camilla locked the door behind me. "Okay," she said, pulling out her laptop. "Tell me everything again, slowly." I did. She typed notes like a detective, then cross-checked the nightshade blend I had photographed. "Found it," she murmured. "It's a luxury microbrand from Italy, not sold commercially. But guess what? It's also a nickname for a private lab that supplies—" "Poisons?" I whispered. "Experimental sedatives," she corrected. "Legal under certain research clauses. Illegal otherwise." My skin pricked. "And you think he—" "I think he wanted you unconscious. Not dead yet." "Why?" She looked at me grimly. "You said your father's trust passes to him if you're incapacitated. Maybe he planned to put you under long enough to get control, make it look like illness." I felt sick. "Then Leela? Probably his first test subject." My vision blurred. "Camilla, what do I do?" She leaned forward. "You gather evidence. Quietly. You already have motive, journal entries, and a possible poison source. You need something undeniable, something digital." "The file," I whispered. "On his laptop." "Exactly." That night, I waited until Adrian fell asleep again. His breathing was steady, deep. I crept downstairs, plugged a USB drive into his laptop, and opened the folder. The encrypted file glared at me like a dare. Nightshade. I tried his password again. No luck. I tried mine. Denied. My mind raced. What else could it be? Then I remembered something Leela had said in her journal. "He says it's temporary. He says she'll be fine once it's done." Temporary. I typed temporary freedom. The file opened. Rows of data filled the screen. Dates, names, transaction IDs, and a single document titled Plan B. I opened it, hands shaking. It wasn't a plan. It was a letter. To me. "If you're reading this then, Alina, you've found what I didn't want you to. You always were too clever for your own good. You think I'm a monster, but everything I did was for us, for the company, for your future. Leela was never meant to be part of it. She just made things complicated. I'll fix it soon. Don't make me choose between you and survival." For us, he'd written. But his version of us was control. I copied everything to the USB and erased the access log. Before I left, I closed the laptop softly, my reflection faint in the dark glass. Still, calm, unreadable. The next morning, Adrian was already up, dressed sharp, sipping his black coffee like nothing had happened. "You slept in," he said, smiling. "Rough night?" "Strange dreams. About poisons." His smile faltered a half-second. "Maybe skip coffee today." "Maybe I won't," I replied, smiling sweetly. For the first time in years, I saw it, the flicker of uncertainty in his perfect composure, the tiniest crack. And I knew I had him. He just didn't know it yet. Because I wasn't the naive wife anymore. I was the woman who'd already seen what poison smelled like, and survived. And soon, I'd make sure he never forgot that scent again.
The next few days passed like a movie I didn't remember agreeing to star in. Adrian's affection returned overnight. Flowers on my nightstand, breakfast on a tray, expensive jewelry left casually on the counter as if to say, "See, I'm the husband everyone envies." He thought gifts could erase the smell of poison. I played along, smiled when he touched me, laughed when he told stories at dinner. But every gesture was calculated, every look recorded. I was building a case, one subtle move at a time. Camilla helped me set up a hidden recorder in my study, disguised as a decorative sculpture. I positioned it where his voice would carry when he came in to work from home. And he did, more often than before. Every time his phone buzzed with encrypted messages. Every time he'd glance toward the door before opening them. And every time I noted the timestamps. The pattern was forming. But what haunted me most wasn't his secrecy. It was Lila's silence. She hadn't called. Not once. No messages, no social media. She'd vanished, like she never existed. One evening, I sat in her room again.
It was spotless, as if erased, but her perfume still lingered faintly in the air. Sweet, floral, mixed with the faint metallic tang that now made my stomach twist. I checked her vanity drawers. Nothing. Except one tube of lipstick, rolling loosely in the back corner. I twisted it open. Inside, instead of lipstick, was a tightly folded slip of paper. My pulse stuttered as I unrolled it. It wasn't written in her hand. It was Adrian's. Stay quiet. You will be rewarded soon. She suspects nothing. I stared at it until the words blurred. That night, I went to bed beside him and forced myself to breathe evenly. His hand brushed my arm as he drifted to sleep. I waited until his breathing deepened, then turned to look at his face. The man I had once loved enough to trust with my life. Now all I saw was a stranger in my bed. The next morning, I began phase 1. Camilla called it strategic innocence. Make him comfortable again, let him believe I was slipping back under his control. A manipulator relaxes when they think they've regained dominance, she'd said. That's when they make mistakes. So, I smiled. I told him I'd been overthinking, that maybe I'd misread things, that I wanted us to be happy again. He bought it instantly. Relief softened his shoulders. He said, I told you, darling, I'd never hurt you. But he already had. 2 nights later, he suggested a dinner party. We should host again, he said cheerfully. It's been months. People are beginning to talk. I knew what he meant. Appearances mattered. If the town saw us shining, smiling, then no one would believe I was living inside a trap. Perfect idea, I said. Camilla helped me prepare the guest list. Every person Adrian respected or feared was invited. Board members, business partners, the family lawyer. He thought it was his night to rebuild credibility. I knew it would be his undoing. On the day of the dinner, I received a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice, raspy and trembling. Elena? My breath caught. Lila? Silence. Then a soft sob. I can't talk long, she whispered. He's watching me. Where are you? I demanded. I don't know. Some villa near the coast. He said it was for my safety, but Elena, something's wrong. I can't remember things. My head, it hurts all the time. My knees went weak. Listen to me. You need to leave. Find anyone. Go to the police. But he said you'd say that, she cut me off. He said you'd twist everything. What? Her voice cracked. He told me you were sick, that you tried to poison him, that he's protecting me from you. I froze. My mouth went dry. The line went dead. I stared at the screen, heartbeat slamming in my ears.
He'd gotten to her first, turned the story upside down. And worse, he'd done it so convincingly she believed him. That night, while Adrian poured wine and charmed our guests, I sat across from him in my emerald silk gown, smiling so sweetly I could taste the venom in my own mouth. He looked powerful, magnetic, every laugh, every toast perfectly timed, the perfect husband. When the conversation drifted toward business, I excused myself to freshen up. Upstairs, I opened his study and checked the recorder. It was full. I pocketed the memory card and slipped back into the party unnoticed. Later, as guests left, Adrian wrapped his arms around me from behind. See, we're fine again, he murmured. Everyone adores us. Of course they do, I said softly. We're unforgettable. When he fell asleep that night, I sat in the study replaying the audio. Most of it was useless chatter, phone calls, typing, small talk. Then around 3 p.m. that day, something changed. A click. A voice. Transfer confirmed, Adrian said. Yes, she'll sign the medical authorization next week. Don't worry, the doctor's discreet. Another voice answered faintly. And the sister? He's contained. My blood ran cold.
Medical authorization contained. He wasn't done. The next morning, I met Camilla at a cafe near the hospital. I said, "He's planning something legal." I showed her the recording. She frowned. Authorization? That could mean he's trying to have you declared unfit. If he can prove mental instability, he gains full control. He could institutionalize you. I stared at her. He's going to make me disappear without killing me? She nodded grimly. And Leela, if she's already sedated, she can't testify to anything. I felt dizzy. "I flip it," I whispered. "What?" "I make him the one who looks unstable." That became phase 2. I began planting seeds, small, deliberate cracks in his perfect image. I told friends he'd been stressed, forgetful, drinking too much. I mentioned how he sometimes called me by Leela's name, how he'd wake up sweating. It spread like perfume, soft, invisible, impossible to erase. Then I started moving funds from our joint account into a private one. Not much, just enough to make him paranoid when he noticed. He did, 3 days later. "Did you withdraw 10,000? He asked sharply. I blinked innocently. "I thought you did." His eyes narrowed. "Don't play games. Maybe it's a bank error." His temper flashed, just for a second. Enough. Phase 3 began the next morning. I sent the recording and Leela's note to a private investigator Camilla recommended, a retired detective named Harris. I told him I didn't want confrontation yet, just surveillance. Catch him making one mistake. 2 days later, Harris called. He met someone at the docks, a woman, mid-30s, brunette, gave her an envelope. What was inside? Couldn't tell, but the name on the boat they boarded? Villa Marina. The same word Leela had murmured. I felt my world tilt. "He's keeping her there," I said. "We need proof." Harris hesitated. "Proof's risky, Mrs. Shaw. You want me to go in?" "No," I said. "I'll go." He sighed. "That's dangerous." So is being married to him. That night, I told Adrian I was going to a spa retreat with Camilla. He said, "You've been tense. Take a break." His approval felt like a noose. The next morning, I drove 3 hours down the coast until the GPS marked Villa Marina, a private estate perched on a cliff, hidden behind iron gates and ivy-covered walls. I parked down the road and climbed through a narrow service path. The wind carried the faint sound of waves crashing below. The villa's windows were shuttered. Through one open balcony door, I saw movement. A woman. Leela. Her hair was tangled, her posture fragile, but she was alive. She was holding a cup, hands shaking. Adrian was standing beside her, his voice low, persuasive. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the gestures. His hand brushing hers, her eyes darting toward the door, fear. I lifted my phone and took photos. Then one last video as he leaned close to whisper something in her ear. His smile, cold as glass. That was enough. I left before he saw me. Driving home, my mind was a storm of fury and control. I had everything I needed. Evidence of Leela's captivity, the poison blend, the recordings, and his forged note. Now it was time to set the stage. When I returned, Adrian greeted me with open arms. He said, "You look radiant. Did the spa help?" "It did," I said smoothly. "I thought about us, about how lucky I am." He smiled. "I knew you'd see reason." He didn't notice the hidden camera on the shelf blinking red. As he poured me wine, I smiled sweetly. "I even brought you something." I reached into my bag and set down a small glass jar. Inside, coffee beans. "A new Italian blend," I said. "Imported, caramel hazelnut." His hand paused midair. He looked at me, then at the jar, then back at me. And for the first time, I saw fear flicker behind his perfect composure. I tilted my head, smiling wider. What's wrong, darling? Don't you trust me? He laughed nervously. Of course I do. But his fingers trembled when he reached for the cup. He didn't drink it. And that was fine, because the camera caught everything: the hesitation, the shift, the guilt. The perfect start to his downfall.
The next morning, sunlight cut through the curtains like shards of glass. Adrian was already gone. I could hear the faint hum of his car engine fade down the hill, the same sound I'd once associated with safety. Now it was the sound of escape, temporary escape. I sat at the table, staring at the untouched jar of coffee from last night. His fingerprints were all over it, literally. I'd made sure of that. Every crime needs a weapon. Every weapon needs a story. I had both. Camilla arrived at 9 sharp. "You did it?" she whispered as she stepped inside. "Oh, I did more than that," I said, handing her the USB drive and the photos from Villa Morena. "He doesn't know I followed him. He doesn't know I've recorded every word since the day he made that cup." Camilla exhaled. "Good, because once this goes public, there's no turning back." "There was never any turning back," I said quietly. She helped me organize everything: timestamps, bank records, photos of Leela, the note, and the audio of his call about the authorization. Each piece was like glass, sharp, deadly, and reflective of his own deceit. By afternoon, we had what looked like a legal murder weapon. But we weren't going to the police. Not yet. We needed a performance. Adrian lived for control. I was going to let him lose it in front of everyone who mattered to him. That night, he came home humming softly, that self-satisfied tune he always whistled when things were going his way. He poured himself whiskey, loosened his tie, and looked at me with a smirk that once melted me, but now only ignited disgust. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Just tired," I replied. "Planning another dinner, a small one this time. Just close friends." He raised an eyebrow. "So soon after the last?" I smiled. "Consider it a celebration." "Of what?" "New beginnings." He laughed. "That's my girl." He had no idea those words would echo back at him in a courtroom soon. The next day, I visited Harris. He'd already traced Leela's location to the villa and confirmed she was under medical supervision. His words, not mine. "There's a private nurse on site. Everything's under her name, but payment trails lead back to your husband." "Can you extract her?" I asked. He looked at me steadily. "If you give the word—" "Do it," I said, safely, quietly. "She needs to remember who the real monster is." He nodded. "You'll have her by the weekend." When I left his office, the air felt different, charged, alive. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was leading. That evening, I invited the guests, Adrian's business partners, the family attorney, and even our doctor. "Just dinner," I said cheerfully on the phone. "A little thank you for all your kindness." When Adrian came home and saw the invitations on the counter, he smiled approvingly. "Good idea. You're learning how to keep up appearances again." I brushed his cheek affectionately. "Always, darling." What he didn't know was that the recorder would be running, the documents would be printed, and the wine would be ready, untouched by me, of course. By Friday morning, Leela was safe. Harris called from the hospital. "She's weak but conscious," said she thought she was dreaming when she saw me. "She kept repeating your name." My throat tightened. Does she remember what he told her? Some of it. Enough to know he lied. I closed my eyes. Good. Keep her protected. Don't let her call yet. I need her silence a little longer. He hesitated. "You're sure about this?" "Yes. The reveal will mean nothing if she speaks too soon." When I hung up, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in years, the kind that comes before lightning strikes. Saturday arrived golden and deceptive. The house gleamed. Flowers adorned every corner, the table set for 10. Adrian was in his element, handsome, composed, the doting husband. "I must admit," he said, buttoning his cufflinks, "you outdid yourself."
Thank you, I said, admiring the reflection of the man who thought he'd already won. Guests arrived one by one, laughter, clinking glasses, compliments floating like perfume. Adrian was magnetic, his charm effortless. I moved through the evening like a ghost in silk, smiling, refilling glasses, listening, waiting. At dessert, I lifted my glass. A toast, I said. The room quieted. Adrian looked at me proudly, thinking I was about to flatter him in front of his kingdom. I said, to truth, to the masks we wear and the moments we forget who's watching. A ripple of confusion passed through the guests. Adrian smiled uneasily. My wife's become poetic lately, he joked. I smiled back. You could say that. Poetry has a way of revealing truth. Then I pressed the remote in my pocket. From the corner shelf, a hidden speaker clicked to life. Adrian's voice filled the room. Transfer confirmed? Yes, she'll sign the medical authorization next week. Don't worry, the doctor's discreet. The room fell silent. Adrian's color drained. Elena, what the hell is this? I didn't stop. The recording continued. And the sister? She's contained. Gasps erupted. The lawyer's jaw clenched. Someone whispered, Is that your voice, Adrian? He turned on me, fury blazing. You're insane. Am I? I said, calmly, pulling a folder from the drawer and placing it on the table. Photos spilled out. Lila at the villa, pale and trembling. The note, the transactions. Was I insane when I found these? He lunged for the folder, but Camilla stepped forward, blocking him. Sit down, she said coldly. He looked around, realizing no one was on his side anymore. The image of control he'd built was collapsing in real time. You think you can ruin me with this circus? You have no proof those recordings are real. I smiled faintly. That's the thing about technology. It timestamps everything. And the file you labeled Nightshade on your laptop, it's now on multiple drives in multiple hands. You can't erase it. For the first time, he stuttered. You broke into our home, I corrected. Our laptop, our lies. His composure cracked entirely. He slammed his fist on the table, shouting, You think this will save you? You don't know what you've started. Yes, I said softly, I do. The police entered less than 5 minutes later. Harris had timed it perfectly. He nodded to me once before turning to Adrian. Mr. Shaw, you're under arrest for unlawful confinement and medical fraud. Adrian's face twisted. You set me up. I leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. No, Adrian. You did that yourself the day you poisoned me. He was dragged out, shouting my name, the image of a man whose empire had crumbled overnight. After they left, the guests stood frozen, stunned into silence. I finally exhaled. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, relief. Camilla squeezed my arm. You did it. I nodded slowly. Not yet. There's still one person I need to see. That night, I drove to the hospital. Lila was awake, propped against white pillows, her eyes glassy but clearer. When she saw me, she burst into tears. I thought you hated me, she whispered. I sat beside her and took her hand. No, I hated what he made us believe. She sobbed harder. He said you were dangerous. I was, I said quietly. To him. She looked at me, eyes wide. Is he gone? For good, I said. We sat in silence, the hum of machines soft around us. For the first time, peace didn't feel like weakness. It felt like justice. Before I left, she said something that stayed with me. You could have killed him, Elena. Why didn't you? I paused at the door. Because I wanted him to live long enough to see what losing everything feels like. As I stepped into the hallway, dawn light spilled through the windows, painting everything gold. A new beginning at last. But even as I walked away, one truth lingered like the scent of bitter coffee. Justice doesn't erase pain, it just makes it bearable.
They said the trial would take months. They were wrong. It took only 8 weeks for Adrian's empire to collapse like glass under pressure. The moment the media got hold of the story, prominent entrepreneur accused of poisoning wife, Holding mistress under false pretenses, the wolves came running. Investors withdrew, partners cut ties, and the board voted him out within 48 hours. His face, once the emblem of success, now filled headlines with words like monster, fraud, and betrayal. I didn't attend the first hearing. I didn't have to. Everything was in motion. But when Camilla called and said, "You should see this yourself," I knew she was right. Closure isn't something the court gives you. It's something you take. The courtroom was cold, sterile, filled with whispers. Adrian sat at the defense table, thinner, paler, but still trying to maintain that quiet arrogance. His lawyer's voice droned on about misunderstandings, stress, and misinterpreted evidence. Then the prosecutor played the tape, the one from that night at Villa Morena. Adrian's voice again, low and calm. Add half. She won't taste it. She never does. My stomach nodded, but I didn't look away. When the audio ended, silence settled over the room like smoke. He turned, searching the crowd, and found me. His lips moved silently. "You win." I didn't smile. Winning wasn't what it felt like. It felt like surviving something that should have ended you. The verdict came swiftly, guilty on multiple counts of fraud, coercion, and attempted manslaughter. He was sentenced to 12 years without parole. 12 years of confinement in the same silence he'd once used against me. When it was over, I walked out, without looking back. The press followed, flashing cameras like lightning. "Mrs. Shaw, any statement? Do you forgive him? What's next for you?" I stopped at the courthouse steps and simply said, "Freedom." That was enough. The weeks that followed were quiet. Too quiet. The mansion felt like a museum of ghosts. His cologne still faint in the hallways. The coffee machine still blinking like it was waiting for instructions. Some mornings, I'd catch myself standing at the counter, staring at that spot where it all began. The cup, the smell, the suspicion that turned into a war. There was a day I almost sold the house, but Camilla stopped me. She said, "Don't let him own even that choice. Make it yours again." So I stayed. I stripped the walls, burned the linens, replaced the furniture. Every trace of his presence was erased until only light remained.
Lila recovered slowly. The medication had dulled her memory, but time and therapy gave her strength. She moved into a small coastal town, painting again, calling every week. "I'm learning to breathe," she told me once, without guilt. Her voice no longer trembled when she said his name. That was victory enough. One afternoon, months later, I received a letter. No name on the envelope, just the familiar angular handwriting. My fingers froze. It was from him. Inside a single page. "Elena, they gave me 12 years, but I started dying long before that. You were always better at endings. Tell me, does it feel like justice? A." I stared at it for a long time before tossing it into the fireplace. The flames caught quickly, curling the paper into ash. Justice doesn't need to answer questions, it just needs to exist. But peace takes longer. I learned that the hard way. Even after his conviction, there were nights I woke up sweating, the smell of burnt coffee haunting me. I'd walk down to the kitchen, pour water, and stare at my reflection in the black marble countertop. That's where I saw it one night, his reflection, behind mine. Not real, of course, just memory. I whispered into the darkness, "You don't get to stay here anymore." And somehow, the silence felt lighter. Camilla and I launched a foundation months later, the Marina Project, named after the villa where everything began. It provided resources and legal support for women trapped in toxic relationships masked by wealth and status. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same money Adrian once used to manipulate was now funding freedom. His name was nowhere on it, of course, only mine. On the 1-year anniversary of his arrest, I returned to Villa Morena. The place was abandoned now, curtains torn, dust layering the marble floors. I walked into the kitchen where the faint outline of a coffee ring still marked the counter.
For a moment, I stood there remembering the first time he'd smiled and said, "You trust me, don't you?" Back then, I'd said yes without hesitation. Now I understood that trust is not given, it's earned, sip by sip. I took out a small thermos from my bag, poured myself a cup of black coffee, and placed another empty cup across from me. "Here's to endings," I murmured. The wind outside rustled through the broken windows, whispering like it agreed. As I was about to leave, I noticed a folder on the floor near the fireplace, probably left by investigators. Inside were photos, the villa, the rooms, the table, and one picture of me taken from the security footage that night. I looked calm, almost serene. It was strange to see myself that way. Not the victim, not the avenger, just free. When I drove home that night, the city lights blurred through the windshield. The radio played softly, an old song Adrian used to hum. I turned it off. Silence was better. Silence meant peace now. Weeks later, the warden called unexpectedly. "Mrs. Shaw, I'm sorry to inform you, your husband was found unresponsive this morning. Natural causes, it seems." I felt nothing at first. No shock, no triumph, just quiet. "Thank you," I said and hung up. That evening, I brewed myself a cup of coffee, the real kind, rich and warm. I sat on the patio, the sunset bleeding across the horizon, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not for him, not even for me, for the years lost to fear, for the love that turned into poison, for every woman who's ever mistaken control for care. As the light faded, I whispered into the wind, "It's over." And for the first time, it truly was. The next morning, I placed a small framed photo on the kitchen counter. Me, Lila, and Camilla smiling on the beach, the sea wind in our hair. Beneath it, I wrote a single line in gold ink. "Trust the smell. Even the sweetest things can burn." And maybe that's the real ending. Not revenge, not justice, but peace earned through truth. Because sometimes surviving is the revenge.
If this story touched your heart or made you feel every twist of pain and justice, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Your support means everything and keeps these emotions alive on screen. And before you go, leave your valuable thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how this story made you feel.